Hi, it's my pleasure to welcome you to Golden Bears Homecoming Webinar, one of our homecoming staycation activities at Missouri State University. My name is Lisa DeWitty Clark, and I'm the Director of Planned Giving, and I'm delighted to be here with you this afternoon. Also joining us are Brent Dunn, who's Vice President of University Advancement and the Executive Director for the Missouri State Foundation, Lori Fan, Executive Director of Alumni Relations, Wendy Ferguson, our Executive Director of Development at the Foundation, and also President Smart, whom I will introduce in just a minute. First of all, let me explain how this virtual gathering works. Unlike a Zoom meeting where we can all see each other's faces or you're in an event in person, you're only seeing me, your host, for right now. This is because you're attending a webinar and not a meeting. In this format, you don't have the ability to speak or to see other attendees. So it's kind of like you're watching a program all by yourself. Secondly, the format today is simple. You sit back, listen, and watch. We can't see you and we can't hear you. So if you want to yell a big loud, "Go Bears," go ahead and scream it out. Of course, we all would have preferred to see you in person today. It's not our normal homecoming week, and normally we would be gathered on campus at Plaster Student Union, and we would have met you in the parking lot in one of the golf courts and golf carts and given you a first-class ride up to the front door. And outside, you probably would have heard students mingling and talking, and maybe the marching band in the background, and all the excitement of a traditional homecoming day. And then as you would have entered, you would have heard lots of talking and maybe seen or recognized old friends or met new friends. But things have changed. And for this year, we are happy to at least be able to offer this virtually. I do want to give a shout out today to a very, very special group of alumni watching. This is their very first Golden Bears gathering. It's the class of 1970. So welcome to each of you, our newest Golden Bears. Since we can't recognize you in person, please give yourself a pat on the back, and we encourage you to join us next year so we can celebrate you at that time as well. So welcome, new Golden Bears. The weather today in Springfield is perfect for homecoming, a little bit cooler. The campus trees are full of fantastic fall colors. I know each and every one of you have very special memories of your time on the campus from many past homecomings. So for now, just hang on to those memories and enjoy this presentation today. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce to you the president of Missouri State University, Cliff Smart. He was named the 11th president of the university on June the 27th, 2011. Previously, he served as the university's general counsel. In addition to setting records and making Missouri State a wonderful place for students to learn, faculty to teach, and staff to work, President Smart has worked tirelessly to keep the university operating as smoothly as possible during these past 7 months. He's done an outstanding job, and we're so proud and thankful to have him. So, President Smart, it's an honor to have you here on this busy weekend. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa and Lori and Debbie, and welcome everyone to our Golden Bears virtual reunion. Not the same as having a couple of hundred people in the ballroom, but hopefully we'll all be back in person next year. I've been on campus all morning today, but we crowned our homecoming king and queen at about 1:30 at a ceremony in Plaster Stadium today. So we had plenty of room for everyone who wanted to watch to come. And so I'm at home right now between events. I'll be heading back to campus about 6 o'clock for our football game, which you all can view on ESPN Plus tonight, kickoff at 7 o'clock. Well, what a challenging year we have all had. You know, I would tell you the last 7 months have been the most challenging time in my entire life, nothing else close. Besides managing through the pandemic, we've had major budget reductions from state revenue cuts, enrollment challenges, racial challenges, a divisive presidential election. But, you know, through all of that, lots of really good things have happened on campus. And so our team has put together a video, our What's New at MSU video. It is right there on the homepage of the website if you want to share it with others or see it again. But I thought we would kick off this meeting as we usually do by remembering back and thinking about the good things that happened last year. And so, Lori, Lisa, let's play the video.
When future generations look back at Missouri State in 2020, they'll see a community of people that united around a common goal. In the fall, we launched our largest fundraising campaign ever, complete with student performances, star appearances, and an amazing fireworks display. During this campaign, we've received some of the biggest gifts in university history, creating new scholarships, programs, and structures. And our students, as always, have been our brightest stars. When the COVID-19 pandemic swept the globe, our community came together like never before. Although most of our students, faculty, and staff were learning and working from home, we united to keep Missouri State University's mission alive. During this time, our students needed financial help, and they got it when we quickly distributed almost $7 million of CARES Act funding. After personal protective equipment became scarce, Jordan Valley Innovation Center teamed up with Cox Health to create thousands of face shields for healthcare workers. And when it came time to plan our safe return to campus, our team installed safety measures, redesigned campus spaces, and launched a semester unlike any other. Missouri State is committed to making our campus a more welcoming place for students of color.
We have to do better, and we are committed to doing better.
The Student African American Brotherhood relocated its headquarters to Springfield and Missouri State, where they will continue their mission to provide pathways to college degrees for Black and Latino men.
President Smart and the MSU team have been just incredibly awesome in doing everything they can to ensure a seamless transition for our team, for our headquarters.
The university is also launching initiatives to expand the Multicultural Resource Center, strengthen diversity training for employees, improve access for underrepresented students, and much more. Access to higher education is a key priority. Missouri State's new scholarships for Boys and Girls Club members across Missouri and free dual credit courses for qualifying high school students are just two of the ways MSU is opening doors to students who want brighter futures. The Center for First Generation Student Success recognized us for being a model university for first generation college students. Students gained access to even more valuable academic programs, including 150 new certificates and a wide expansion of degree programs available completely online. That's not to mention the formal approval of the university's new Doctor of Defense and Strategic Studies, a postgraduate program for students who want to one day protect the nations of the world.
And top honors to Missouri State University.
Our ad team won first place in the peer-to-peer protective project competition. Phi Beta Lambda won a ton of awards in the State Leadership Convention. And Missouri State's Risk Management Society Challenge team advanced to the final round of their competition. Our students continue to get dedicated support from award-winning faculty, like Dr. Richard Gebkin and Dr. Gary Mintz. Missouri State moved onward upward by launching its biggest campaign in school history, $250 million.
I know we can do this. Bears always face a challenge with resolve, with guts, and we do it together.
Before a packed house at Hammonds Hall, the Missouri State Foundation announced it was already more than halfway toward reaching its goal.
We are Bears!
Alumnus John Goodman is chairing the campaign, which has already made a positive difference for students at MSU. We're transforming our university thanks to the generous gifts to the Darr College of Agriculture and the Reynolds College of Arts and Letters, named in honor of Judith Enyart Reynolds. In all, the foundation raised more than $22 million in the last year. Our faculty and staff picked up almost $30 million in external research funding, too. All of that work centers on our public affairs mission. The Carnegie Foundation recognized Missouri State with the Community Engagement Classification, which reflects our commitment to helping our community. And Missouri State was recognized as one of the most veteran-friendly employers in the state by the Department of Defense. Bears Athletics had another stellar campaign, one that was on track to win the Missouri Valley Conference All-Sports Trophy before the pandemic. Men's soccer completed a historic undefeated season and hosted its first NCAA regional match.
History is made. They have never been to the second round of the NCAA. Congratulations, Missouri State University.
Coach Mox's first year at the helm of the Lady Bears was a huge success.
There's a free ball by Manning. Got it! Manning! It's a big shot as the horn sounds.
The team claimed a Valley title with a 26-4 record and finished the year ranked as the 19th best team in the country. That success resulted in Mox being named the nation's top rookie head coach. The Bears also brought acclaimed head football coach Bobby Petrino to Springfield. He's installing an exciting brand of football and bringing top recruits to the program. Despite the challenges, we showed what it means to be a Bear. That's what's new at MSU.
Very good. Again, that video is available on the homepage of the website. Our team, led by Chris Nagel, put that together ourselves in a very challenging year, and so I hope you enjoyed that. I do want to highlight a couple of things that were on the video, as well as a couple of things that have occurred since. Hard to imagine that it's only been a year ago that we kicked off the Onward Upward campaign and had already raised $151 million. We're now well over the $200 million mark with 2 years to go. And so we've had some really tremendous gifts come in, including the largest scholarship gift in the history of the university, and that was from the C.W. Titus Foundation, and has resulted in the naming of the Reynolds College of Arts and Letters. You will soon get one of these publications in the mail from the foundation. There's a great story in there about Tim and Judy Reynolds, how they met at the university, her career here, and how they wanted to give back to their alma mater. And that's been one of the things that helped get me through the pandemic, that kind of amazing gift. Our enrollment turned out to be better than anticipated. We actually increased in size this year. We're above 26,000 students for the 5th year in a row as a system, more than 24,000 of those on the Springfield campus, and we set a record for graduate enrollment with 3,885 students studying on the Springfield campus. Most importantly, though, we graduated the most students in the history of the university. We have awarded 5,695 diplomas or other credentials this year. That is a record, and we look forward to conferring about 800 of those tomorrow in 2 graduation ceremonies beginning at 10 and 2 o'clock at JQH Arena. I couldn't give an update without talking about the COVID. And so let me tell you a few things there. We're in week 9. We've completed week 9 of our semester. So we're beyond the halfway point. Frankly, many of us didn't know if we would be open or not by 9 weeks in. We started the semester off a little rough. Second week, we had almost 400 positive cases, almost all students. But since then, it's come down every week, such that last week we only had 26 positives. And we have our plan to deliver mostly classes that have an in-person seated component with 3,200 people living on the residence hall, with modified but fun and meaningful events, including intramurals, student organizations, homecoming activities, etc. That plan has been successful to this point. And we've gotten there by modifying how we deliver classes, a lot more blended classes. So pieces are online while other things occur in person. That's let us continue performance classes, science, health, all those kinds of programs that need that in-person experience. We think that's been really important for our freshmen as well, and so they are in-person classes. And I think that's why our enrollment has remained strong, and our freshman class was right at what it was a year ago, whereas nationally the freshman classes all across America are down 16% as per data that was released last week. Masking in class and enforcing that policy universally, no drinking, no eating in classrooms, has been very successful. To our knowledge, not a single faculty member has contracted the virus through classroom interaction, and that's been very important, and that fact has allowed us to continue. Because things are going well, we've announced that we'll continue the semester as is. We'll do Thanksgiving break. We'll come back for the last week of classes, for finals, and for our December graduations. So I would wrap up that piece by saying I'm very proud of our faculty, staff, and students for really working to make this happen, for following the rules, by taking this virus seriously, and the results have been very positive. Let me stop there, and I think you all can type in questions in the QA feature that Lisa or Lori would be happy to read. And so if you want to give me any particular input or ask a question, I'm happy to respond. All right, I don't see anything coming in the Q&A, and so last call here on that. And I will look forward to seeing all of you back on campus in person for next year's homecoming. You've got a great program coming today, and from Dean Tom Peters, and so I will turn it over to him and or Lisa, if you're going to introduce Tom.
Thank you so much, President Smart. We really appreciate that. I don't know about you, but that video makes me so proud of Missouri State. Aren't you proud to be a Bear? Thank you for being patient with us on the front side of that while we kind of work through a few technical difficulties. This is a great format to have, but we're still in the learning process, so thank you for being patient with us. We're going to begin the program now, and if you have attended the luncheon in the last couple of years, you might remember our next guest, Dean of the Libraries of Missouri State, Tom Peters. The Missouri State Library System is fortunate to have such a fantastic special collections and archives department, not only to preserve the history of Missouri State University, but also the state of Missouri and beyond. Today, Dean Tom Peters is going to be sharing his perspective on a unique topic that I know many of you will find familiar. Welcome, Dean, Tom, and I'll let you take it away. We're always thankful and appreciative to have you here.
Thanks so much, Lisa, and welcome, Golden Bears. Unfortunately, we're not all gathered together over in Plaster Student Union. I'm here in my office here in Dwayne G. Meyer Library, but happy to be with you online this afternoon. So what I'd like to talk about just for a few minutes is an interesting topic, the Ozark Jubilee. And just to remind everyone, the Ozark Jubilee was a very popular weekly national live television broadcast over ABC TV, and it originated right here in Springfield, Missouri, in the Jewel Theater, which is no longer standing, but downtown Springfield. So from January 22nd, 1955, all the way through to September 24th, 1960, almost 6 years, they broadcast a live, nationally broadcast television program every week. So it was 52 weeks a year. In 1955, Christmas Eve fell on a Saturday night. They did a show. So they did a show every week for almost 6 years, just an amazing feat. And what I want to talk about just for a few minutes today is how did this come about? You know, you just don't start broadcasting live national television from Springfield, Missouri in the mid 50s. Just, you know, you decide to do it on a Friday afternoon and it comes up on Monday morning. It actually took them decades to get there. So two key significant events are on Christmas Day of 1933 is when KWTO radio station first began broadcasting. Ralph Foster and his crew came down from St. Joseph, Missouri, and ended up starting this KWTO, Keep Watching the Ozarks radio station on Christmas Day of 1933. And then 20 years and a day later, on Saturday, December 26th of 1953, was the first broadcast over KYTV of the Ozark Jubilee. So it started off as a local television broadcast very late in 1953, and then by early January of 55, it went national over the ABC television network. So what I want to talk about is how did this come about? So next slide, please, Lisa. Or I think Lori's advanced, I'm sorry. So hillbilly variety shows have been around for about 100 years now, and they all kind of follow the same format. There's always some music, has to be some music. There's usually some singing. There's usually some kind of a comedy routine, and there's often dancing. So this was true in the 1920s, and I think there's at least a few Branson shows that are starting to come back to life now. You can go see a Branson show tonight and see basically the same type of variety show. So in terms of what they played, so the traditional instruments of a hillbilly variety show are, of course, the fiddle. I think that's really the main instrument of mountain music, old-timey music, whatever you want to call it. The banjo, of course, is another key instrument. Certainly the guitar and also the bass violin was often common. And of course, the dancing typically was square dancing. And so, especially when the Ozark Jubilee came along, there was hardly a 30-minute segment of the Jubilee that would go by without one of the many square dancing teams that performed on the Jubilee coming out for a square dancing routine. They knew it was very kinetic, and it really worked well on television. So radio really hit the big time in the 20s across the nation. 1922 was really a breakout year for radio stations, radio broadcasting, and that was kind of the year where everybody had to have a radio receiver. And so in the 20s, we saw a big demand for all types of music. And initially, when radio hit it big, they thought that classical music was going to be the type of music that most people wanted to listen to. And some people call it potted palm music because you'd sort of have somebody in a hotel lobby or something playing some classical music. Well, one time a radio station down in Atlanta, whoever was supposed to be playing, and this music was always played live. There was no recorded music in the 20s, 30s, 40s, into the 50s. There was no pre-recorded music. It was all live music. One time a station down in Atlanta, whoever was supposed to be playing, I don't know if they were ill or drunk or I don't know what, but they didn't play. And so they were just like, hey, this guy over here knows how to play the fiddle. And he played some old timey fiddle music. And they got all these postcards and letters from listeners like, we love that music, more of that music. That's really how country, what we now call country and western music, got started. Of course, the music goes way back hundreds of years, but in terms of like a commercial enterprise, it was just almost by happenstance with radio as the medium that led to the emergence of country music. Now, hillbilly variety shows also have where did they come from? The first group that really, I think, did the hillbilly variety show was the Weaver Brothers and Elviry, and I'll talk more about them in just a minute or two. But prior to the emergence of these country and western variety shows, there were tent shows in the late 19th century and early 20th century, and literally they'd take a tent around, and it was almost like not quite a circus, but it'd be some entertainment. Again, music, singing, comedy, and dancing. Also, unfortunately, minstrel shows are another part of this, where unfortunately, but it's just part of history, a lot of the performers who would eventually perform on KWTO and then again in the Ozark Jubilee had done some blackface entertainment in their early parts of their career. It's just part of the history. The third one is medicine shows. So as the name implies, the whole thing was to entertain people and get them revved up so they'd buy the medicine. And lo and behold, the medicine often contained 25, 35, 45% alcohol. So they sold a lot of quote unquote medicine at these medicine shows. And then last but not least, vaudeville. So vaudeville was really popular in the big cities, and vaudeville, unlike the four basic elements of a hillbilly variety show, vaudeville had all kinds of stuff: animal acts, plate spinners, ventriloquists, puppeteers, trapeze artists, anything and everything went on during vaudeville performances. So that was another sort of source of these hillbilly variety shows. Next slide, please. So in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, literally hundreds of these shows cropped up across the nation, all the way from New York City. There was actually a hillbilly variety show in Greenwich Village in New York City. In LA was actually a hotbed of hillbilly variety shows, especially around the war, during the Second World War era. But the three main ones, and I think most people would agree with me that study this stuff, the first one was the WLS National Barn Dance out of Chicago. WLS was one of the major radio stations in Chicago, and we had that kind of northern migration from the south. So we had a lot of people that responded well to that barn dance. And so that really, if anybody asks you, have a trivia contest, what city was the first city to sort of be the capital of country music? It was WLS in Chicago, of all places. Then the Grand Ole Opry came on. Of course, that's been a very long-standing hillbilly variety show out of Nashville, and it's still going. And then the third one was the Ozark Jubilee. And when the Ozark Jubilee sort of broke into the national television, they were the first hillbilly variety show to really hit it big on national TV. There have been other attempts to do live national hillbilly variety shows on TV in the early years of television, but none of them really lasted. There'd be like summer replacements and things like that. But the Ozark Jubilee was a real show, and it went on for almost 6 years. And sometimes it would win its market. It would beat other shows. They had a real strong following. Anywhere from 9 million to 18 million people were watching the Ozark Jubilee. Now, like I said, there were hundreds of other ones, and I got mention a couple at least. One was the Louisiana Hayride down in Shreveport. Elvis Presley actually kind of broke into his career through the Louisiana Hayride. Another one was the Big D Jamboree down in Dallas, Texas. And then the last one I just put on there is kind of a joke. I grew up in Fort Dodge, Iowa. There was a barn dance when I was growing up on KVFD, which is the local television station. It was not by far any stretch of the imagination one of the major hillbilly variety shows, but these things were all over the place throughout the U.S. In the middle part of the 20th century. So next slide. So pop quiz. Who knew we were going to get a pop quiz? I knew because I planned this talk. So there was really only one person who had a major contribution to all three of those top three hillbilly variety shows: the WLS National Barn Dance, the Grand Ole Opry, and the Ozark Jubilee. I won't pause and ask for anybody to try to answer, but the hint here is what we're looking at is a 1930s photograph. On the left is a woman named Myrtle Cooper, but her stage name was Lulabelle. And the man on the right is a young Red Foley. And Lulabelle's beau on the WLS National Barn Dance, his name was Burrhead. So Burrhead was Red Foley as a young man. And they had kind of this, attraction comedy routine that they'd run. You can kind of tell from this photograph. And so he was very big in the National Barn Dance in the 30s. He came out of Kentucky. And then he went on to be the lead of the network broadcast of the Ozark Jubilee in the 40s and into the early 50s. And then he kind of had a falling out with them. And then it was 1954 when Cy Simon from KWTO, some of you may remember Cy Simon, he convinced Red to relocate from Nashville to Springfield, and with the promise of an attempt to get a national hillbilly variety show on a national TV network, ABC TV as it ended up. Now, Red was a big country and western star, one of the biggest ones. And so to lure Red Foley away from Nashville was a big coup. And he stayed here. It was good for his career. It was certainly good for the Ozark Jubilee, but he was the only person in the entire history of country and western music that was really involved in those three major hillbilly variety shows. So let's go to the next slide, and let's just take a step back, and I want to talk a little bit about the Weaver Brothers and Elvira. I love this act. So on the top there we see Leon Weaver. His stage name was Abner, and in the middle we see Elvira. Her real name was June Petrie. She was actually born in Chicago, raised in Chicago, and then the family relocated to Springfield when she was a young woman. And then down in the bottom of that picture there is Frank Weaver. His stage name was Cicero, and he, like Harpo Marx, never talked on stage, or they did movies and other things as well. He was just always a silent sort of comic, actually pre-Harpo Marx. So he may have influenced that. And then on the left there, you see, for a while they called themselves the Arkansas Travelers. Get it? Arkansas. Now, it gets even better than that, because Leon Weaver is generally regarded as being the first person, this is really a claim to fame, the first person to play the saw professionally. So if you ever heard anybody play a saw, you know that probably Leon Weaver was the one who got that all started. Now, they were big in vaudeville, and they were huge in vaudeville. Actually, they made a lot of money doing vaudeville, and they went East Coast, West Coast. They even went over to Europe and the UK. They performed before the Queen. I mean, they were a huge act, especially in the 20s and 30s. And so they were the first ones to kind of introduce what we now know as like country comedy, Rube, the Country Rube, and that kind of comedy. They were the ones who really kind of introduced it and perfected it. And really, you know, a lot of what happens today and Hee Haw and all those other kind of hillbilly variety shows, they all, once you sort of know the Weaver Brothers and what they did in Elvira, they all are kind of playing off that basic model that these three individuals developed. To the point that with Elvira, when Myrtle Cooper was breaking into the WLS National Barn Dance, they told her, go see this woman with the Weaver brothers and try to mimic the way she acts on stage. So Myrtle Cooper as Lulabelle is a direct descendant of Elvira. And I think like Minnie Pearl is also drawing off this kind of, mountain woman who kind of man crazy and speaks her mind and tough as nails and very candid in her comments. That all goes back to Elvira as a character. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. So then back to KWTO. So KWTO for 20 years was trying to perfect the hillbilly variety show. And in the 30s and especially in the 40s, they developed an entire stable of talent. So they would have people come in and they would have 25, 30 people who were on payroll as musicians and singers. And most of these radio programs were for 15 minutes long. They were all live. So if you had a 7:15 a.m. radio show, you had to be at the KWTO studios, which were right across the street from the Shrine Mosque. The building's no longer there. You had to be there by 7:15 because there was no tapes, there were no pre-recorded. You had to be there. So they built up this amazing group of entertainers. Just two that we see here sitting in a nearby restaurant, Chet Atkins and Zed Tanis. And in 1947, I believe it was, one time when Cy Simon was on vacation, they fired both of them. They didn't like Chet Atkins, the way he played the guitar, and Zed Tanis was an excellent fiddler, but he was a little bit too modern for their taste. So they both got fired in the mid-40s. Now, they would both come back and play for KWTO, but we see where we have some national people kind of came through Springfield because of this demand. So people like Les Paul and Homer and Jethro. And then in 49, they hired Mother Maybelle Carter from the Carter family and her three daughters, and call them the Carter sisters. They came to perform on KWTO, and they stayed about a year, and then they went back to Nashville. And but they had that kind of talent coming through Springfield because of this. Next slide, please. Okay, so in the 40s, they had all kinds of shows that they were these hillbilly variety shows. So they had things like the Hayloft Frolic and the Cornfield Follies and the Hillbilly Hit Parade. So these were all hillbilly variety shows. They were just trying different ways of packaging their stable of entertainers, and they had comedians as well. The most important one and the most successful one was this one called Corn's a Crackin'. Now, where in the heck did that name come from? It was basically, there was a Broadway show in the early 40s called Hell's a Poppin'. And it was also a 1941 Hollywood film. And some of the people from KWTO had gone up to Kansas City to see a touring company of Hell's a Poppin'. And they got, as they were driving back, I imagine they were talking about, gee, we could do a variety show like that, and what would we call it? And somebody came up with the name Corn's a Crackin'. So Bill Ring was the MC. And in 1946, the Mutual Broadcasting System, which was a national radio network, picked up the show. And so this was the first show to really go national out of KWTO. And it proved to Ralph Foster and Cy Simon and others, there was a national audience for hillbilly variety shows. They got good ratings and it went well. So for example, in 1947, so they'd take the show on the road. They go around to various places because they could do a radio broadcast from just about anywhere. And in 1947, 8,200 people attended this show at the Howell County Fair over where West Plains is. 8,200 people attended that show. There were only 22,000 people in the entire Howell County at that time. So more than 1 out of every 3 people in Howell County was at that show that night. That's how popular Corn's a Crackin' was. But eventually they didn't have a headliner. There was really an ensemble cast. And so they dropped it by the Mutual Broadcasting System, and it kind of fell apart. Now, next slide, please. I just got to say a little bit about comedy because I love the comedy. And of all the comedians that appeared on the Ozark Jubilee and some of these other shows, my favorite, hands down, is Gugu Rutledge. And here he is on the cover 3 times, 3 different images of Gugu Rutledge on the KWTO dial. We have we've been doing a digitization project for the Ozark Jubilee. And so you can see some of these shows, and we have some of the Gugu's skits on the Ozark Jubilee program that I think are just as hilarious today as they were in the late 50s. He was just a classic comedian. We always had people like Lenny Aylshire. Slim Wilson was actually a good comedian, as well as a singer and a musician. A guy named Pete Stamper came over from Kentucky, was a good kind of stand-up comedian. Uncle Sipe and Aunt Sap, they were a husband and wife team. Lawrence and Neva Brassfield, they were hilarious. Smiley Burnett, Shug Fisher. Really, between the KWTO shows and the Ozark Jubilee, there's just a whole lot of excellent comedy coming out of these hillbilly variety shows. Okay, next slide. So that's kind of a little background to what was going on here. So now we get, after the war, 46, 47, 48, television as a technology had been known about since the 1920s, believe it or not. They knew that television was possible in the 20s, and they'd done some preliminary work on it. But between the Great Depression and the Second World War, they didn't get to what I call the adoption and diffusion stage, where television really took off in the US and other places of the developed world. It was really about 48, 49, 50 that television really started to take off. And so in 53, 2 television stations began operating in Springfield. One of them was KYTV. They started in October, and by late December, they were doing the Ozark Jubilee from their studios, which were located where they still are, over on West Sunshine here in Springfield. And so they started this soon after they went on the air. But it was really the KWTO team, particularly Cy Simon, who really was the sort of creative genius and the impetus behind this Ozark Jubilee variety show. And then, of course, the rest is history. It took off. It became a national broadcast program. And as Wayne Glenn, the old record collector, says, and others say, it's the most important thing musically that's happened in the Ozarks region to date. Ozark Mountain Daredevils, a lot of great music has come out of the Ozarks, but really this Ozark Jubilee was an amazing show. So what I've tried to do briefly, and probably ran a little bit long, was just give you an overview of how did this come about? Because it took a lot of people to make this happen, a lot of talented people. It was just amazing how many talented people were involved in sort of the genesis and the fruition of the Ozark Jubilee. And it also took those 2 sort of basic technological communications developments, first radio and then television, to kind of create the conditions under which something like the Ozark Jubilee could come to pass. Right here in little old Springfield, there was a nationally broadcast television program for almost 6 years. So thanks very much. I don't know if anybody has any questions. Want to thank you for your time and attention. There's my contact information if you want to contact me.
Thank you, Dean Tom. We always appreciate and enjoy your presentations. I've joked with Dean Tom over the years and told him that if he didn't want to keep from being asked back so many times, then he should just start doing a bad job. But he does such a fantastic job, and everybody loves you so much. You just keep getting asked back over and over again. So we do appreciate your time and all that you do to preserve the Ozarkian history.
Well, thanks much. I really, yes, the Barbara points out, yeah, the square dancing group that was really, I would say it was the key the key square dancing troupe on the Jubilee called the Promenaders. That actually started here at SMS. It was a student square dancing. Square dancing was, you know, kind of a big deal back in the 50s. A lot of square dance troupes started, and there were competitions and things. But the Promenaders started right here at SMS, and there's still a few of them still alive, but unfortunately, a lot of them have passed on. But they were great. They had a lot of kids as well. They had the Lake of the Ozarks tadpoles, you might remember, were the little kids. They found out that television viewers really liked watching young people sing and dance. And so they even had a thing called the Junior Jubilee. And of course, little Brenda Lee got her national debut right on the Ozark Jubilee.
Okay, well, that's our program for today, and I hope you've enjoyed our time together and also these presentations. So thank you for coming, and go Bears.